The Pigman Story and the House Full of Weird Objects. The Pigman's voice was as gruff as he looked. Sometimes when he talked, it felt like I was only getting half the story. I wasn't sure whether he was withholding or I was missing half the words. The air around us was certainly murky, even for a poorly lit pub. His chubby hands fascinated me and sometimes distracted me from his story. Actually, I missed the setup, though. I can tell you it was definitely something to do with his wife, who was definitely absent now, if not absent at the time of the story. The Pigman had some neighbors he hated, despised even, but I can't remember why exactly. I remember fragments. Stepping on his lawn when mowing theirs, noisy, but only on one day, or very strange time, to be noisy, I mean. Also, incidentally, he told me something, just mentioned it really, about a missing boy. A strange, lovely boy everybody had loved, or almost everyone. And one day he just disappeared at a sleepover a few streets over. But this boy has nothing to do with the Pigman story, nothing to do with what I'm telling you now. So anyway, he hates these neighbors, the couple, straight, no kids. And meanwhile, his dog goes missing. One of those miniature horse of a dog. Those fuckers that used to hunt lions with. Huge and red and strong and mean, too. And at first he thinks it's been stolen. Because, well, you know what some people are willing to pay for pedigree dogs. I had a rescue once. Okay, you're right. Back to the topic. The Pigman thought it had been stolen due to its size and desirability and monetary value. In fact, kind of a no-brainer if you think about it. Those types of dogs get nabbed all the time. Now, at this point, he did go into a lot of excruciating detail about how he broke in. Turns out our Piggy is a man of many talents and used to work successfully. He made a point of adding as a locksmith. But really, this was one of those points when I got distracted by his ugly hands or tried to remember where I was. The mystery pub was like its own strata, and I forgot. For most of the time I was in there, why I'd come to stumble upon it in the first place, about that postman foretold in dreams, and following him around the village, how I thought he'd gone in there. I also found myself drinking a black drink at some point that I didn't remember ordering. But anyway, the Pigman breaks into his neighbor's abode, and he said it was very normal, routine, that he was a little annoyed that these people he hated so much had some of the same possessions and tastes as him. A bedspread in a spare room, titles in the DVD collection, the same phone, same kettle, shit like that. Strange, really, when you think how uniform most people's houses are. The generic prints from IKEA, the acceptable color scheme. Funny he remembers that shit, really. But then the dude had just broken into a stranger's house for no rational reason, so. But there was a locked room, and he talked a lot about the locked room from his locksmith days and what they tended to mean. 3 main categories, he said, but they escape me now. But no signs of an actual dog, except a lead and a small chewable plastic bone toy. But he did concede that they, the couple, had owned a small white dog years back. Though they didn't have it long, 2 years tops, and it died. So this wasn't suspicious in itself. He went through the place bit by bit, room by room, just like I did with the old lady's place later. The place was narrow, 3-story detached house, as we called them in merry old England. Yeah, exactly, a freestanding. In the middle, in an unlocked 2nd-story spare bedroom, he found a black box on a cheap plywood desk. Right in the center, perfectly placed, is actually how he put it. Perfectly placed. He said it was purposeful.
And no dirt, smudges clutter around it, nothing at all. It was shiny and perfect and purposeful and just there. And for reasons I can't tell you, mate, I thought it would be locked. I thought there's no way I'm getting in here, and at the same time something frightened me about what might be in there. For your eyes only, son, not for mine. But it was open, wide open, slid open like a virgin's panties.
And I remember Piggy kind of licked his lips when he said that, which constantly had that spittle kind of spit on them, The lower one did. Didn't mention that before. I mean, they call him a Pigman for a reason. I wondered if somebody should be searching his house. He went on to tell me that inside that box was a single sheet of A4 paper. And he told me what was written on it, but all I can remember is that it was text. I keep trying to remember what it said, but can't. It's been driving me crazy, to be honest. That period when I was waiting to hear from Maurice about the offshore transaction, my mind kept coming back to it, like somehow the heart of my anxiety, the apex of it all, and would provide some type of lonely answer. The lacuna of my soul. I mean, it can't be relevant to all this, can it? A story I'm not sure is true, told to me in a place I'm not convinced exists. Right? Crazy. Bat shit. But either way, he finds the paper and then...
I put the paper back in the box, son. Had to, right? Otherwise, they'd have known I was there. But wish I hadn't now. I feel like it could have done me some good. The box was the only weird thing I had found up to that point, but obviously nothing to do with my dog. And I'm getting angry, too. Irritable. Angry as fuck that I had to break into this Muppet's place, and all I can find is a stinking piece of paper. I did see something odd. Small, but odd-like. Scribbling. Little pencil scribblings on the stair wall. You know, like you might see if someone was marking where to hang a skirting board or a picture hook. But these weren't those kind of markings. Too many symbols. Low and silly shit to boot. Smiley faces. Little drawing of clouds and houses, but not kitty drawings either. You know, like those tossers who let their kids scrawl all over the walls because they're creative. Nothing fun about them at all. No color. Adult doodlings. No, they weren't big. Like I said, a long, small row, a few inches high. A row a bit downstairs as well, in that hall. It's not exactly called the sun weird, though, is it? And the dog chew was meaningless because they used to have a dog. I was starting to give up. I was starting to feel paranoid. Thought about getting out while I still could. Because you got to bear in mind, son, this could have gotten me in some real trouble. Breaking and entering's no joke. Oh, don't worry about it, officer. I thought they had my ridgeback. Well, you're kind of ruining the suspense of the story there, son. You'll find out soon enough whether me and Sammy were ever united. But do I look a happy man? Ask yourself that first. I'm not here waiting for my friends. I drink alone. I'm halfway up those stairs at the top floor, trying to figure those weirdo doodlings when I think I've been rumbled. Very distinct door opening sound down below. Front door, I figure. I freeze up and I'm more afraid than I expect. This isn't exactly my first rodeo. I was other things before I was a locksmith's son. I'm not sure if I'm statue, like 5 seconds or 5 minutes. But suddenly I exhale and I relax, and something tells me that everything is going to be all right. All of it, son. I used to worry too much about most things right up until I hit 40. But all the times I was stood on those stairs, I'd realized for a while that most things didn't matter. No, I didn't still think someone was in the house. I'm not saying I wouldn't have been bothered about getting caught. Fuck, son. There's worrying and there's concern. Oh, by the way, I can't place your accent. I've been meaning to ask, are you one of our North American cousins? Yeah, you're right. Story first, then we'll chat. The house is empty. What I heard did sound like a door, but I'm confident I'm alone. But still not confident that my instincts about Sammy's location are correct. I wonder if I've gone a bit barmy, but I decide I might as well take a look at the last part of the house. Get it over and done with quickly, but check it out. Who knows? Maybe I'll find something else. I haven't taken 3 more steps when I hear another noise, closer, louder, but just as distinct. A scraping, like something's up and down or across-like in one of the rooms. Scraping against the wall or the skirting boards. Not a person. I know it's not a person, and I'm doubtful that it's Sammy. But the noise is real, very real. My eyes are scanning, and it's like the thing's invisible. I can hear it, but not see it. And it's not like that in the walls sort of sound, creaking pipes and expanding floorboards. There's this big mahogany wardrobe, different to most of their furniture, and probably more expensive too. Definitely, actually, antique, more unique, almost as wide as the room. Its 2 shades of brown, and the darker parts actually shine more. Beautiful bit of wood, actually. It's like looked after, but also the more you look at it, the more you realize how scratched it is. Doesn't ruin it as such. Some would say it gives it more character, like a bit of history in a piece of furniture, me. But regardless, I'm thinking surely they're not keeping my dog in that, evil bastards. But then again, he isn't running round their garden, is he? Bit blatant, that would be. So they gotta be keeping him somewhere. I approach, and I'm not afraid to admit I'm pretty scared. My heart is voting for flight. When I'm step or 2 away, I hear the noise again, nearly shit my pants. Probably locked anyway, I keep telling myself. It's probably locked anyway. It's not locked. First thing I notice. By the way, he strings out the suspense here. I've been a bit mean about Piggy. To be fair to him, I've met far worse storytellers. He had a knack, some skills. He drains his pint, looked surreptitiously around the pub, like someone might be trying to record him. Looks me in the eye, hard swallows, a few more beats for extra emphasis, and continues. Is the backing of the thing, which is ridiculous considering what I'm about to tell you. But I do notice the sodding backing. It's all dark gray foam. Reminds me of what they put in camera boxes. You know, expensive tech equipment. You know, for them molded inlays. And you don't expect it, and it sticks out a mile. So I guess that's the reason why. Then I take in the shelves, one by one and all at once. Masks. Lots of masks. Compressed polystyrene mannequin heads wrapped in masks. Mainly kinky, all weird. Bondage shit, or bondage shit meets Halloween. It freaks me more than if I'd found a sodding snuff movie or something like that. It was so organized, and you know. Scaled, I suggested. Yes, son. You've got a brain on you, son. Scaled is the word. Scaly bastards. Now, does this mean they're more or less likely to be behind Sammy? No fucking clue. But it makes me forget the noise for a second, till I hear it again, and step back so hard I end up falling on my flabby, bleeding ass. I really did, not ashamed to say. My eyes start searching frantically before I get up. Bottom first. Seems most likely, but it's still. Then I get on my feet and confirm this. I look around the rest of the room and wonder about behind the big fucker. Obvious solution, really. But I roughly eyeball how deep it goes and then check the side for dimensions. Doesn't seem to be any missing depth when you factor in the foam inlay and the natural back. So,
you got me. I say, or think I did, I don't really remember, but then I stopped being so slow on the uptake and...
Bingo, son. Bing and fucking go. The walls. Truth is, I'll admit it to you, though I never admitted it to anybody else before. I wanted to go back, but was afraid. Go when they were on holiday and see if there was anything in those walls. And I was thinking beyond Sammy by now, though I'm not sure what I was thinking. Imagine me there, letting rip with a sledgehammer or a crowbar. But the truth is, I bottled it. I mean, would you?
I said no, but refrained from adding, I wouldn't have broken in there in the first place. Wait, do you think they could have been suspects in the boy's disappearance? Huh. I think so much, and yet I didn't think of that at all. But then he never said anything about that. You think he would have? Shit, maybe old Piggy did it. Carved the likable adolescents up like so much long pig and ate bacon sandwiches every morning. Oh, sorry, officer. I wouldn't want to be in poor taste while you've got me chained up for unspecified charges. Yes, okay. I'm not chained, merely handcuffed. And I know I'm here for trying to steal the server HDD from the data center. But there's more going on here, much more. And don't try to tell me otherwise. This isn't my first rodeo. And on that note, level with me on something. You know, ever since you put me in that surprisingly comfortable cell, I've been trying to figure how you tracked me so fast, so smoothly. You had me on the facial rec software the entire time, didn't you? That was a lie, right? About killing the Mir 19 project? Nobody in my circles believed that you dumped that thing. Shit, Maurice even claimed he's seen the code. You had to be running something national, perfectly linked, I mean, even if you have full system access, which never happens. Not even the NSA. Somebody's always got to ask permission from somebody for something. But it's been like you installed a tracker on me at birth. Yes, the kid lived on their street. The guy with the lost dog and his neighbors who he suspected. You know, now that I think of it, the kid was a strange, incidental detail. I mean, like, hey, by the way, there's a missing kid, too. Funny shit. Like if Scrooge had been all about bookkeeping and Charlie said, oh, and by the way, there's some ghosts, too. No, he didn't say much more about the mask or what he thought they might be for. I think he was more perturbed by the matching bedspread, to be honest. I think they were basically all kinky sex masks, but the bizarro end of the spectrum. He said one was the classic bring on the gimp, but the rest were kind of horror, like one had a big carrot nose and one had a witch's hair. That's all that really sticks out now. Nothing happened next. Sorry it's so anticlimactic. I think we had some banal small talk. Obviously the American angle interested him, and I might have had 2 or 3 more drinks with him. He made it hard not to have another drink with him. You started to feel like it wasn't really an option. I didn't really remember how it ended or when I left, but I do remember that it was dark on the walk home. Full night, and I reflected a little on where or how the postie had done his disappearing act, but really none of that seemed important anymore. So since Esmeralda has gone somewhere and I have struck out on my little spy mission, I figure why not explore the rest of the house a little? See if the rest of it is as lame and creepy as the dining room and the TV. Oh boy, you don't even know. You don't even know. No, I didn't go through her drawers. Well, kind of. And yes, before you say it, yes, I certainly had broken that unspoken contract of respect that I spoke of earlier. But hey, at least I admit to my bads. Own my shit. Can your fucking paymaster say the same thing? What does that mean? Are you seriously asking me that question, officer? Wow. Well, let me tell you what I found. Well, firstly, let me remind you that I didn't know the house that well. Remember, I'm in the basement 23/7, and I'd rather be there because, well, what's this old dame's house got to offer me except a crappy old television set? And it's really darkly lit most of the time, so I never really appreciated just how old it is. Like glum and chintzy, dead grandmothers, yada yada. Gloomy anaglypta wallpaper everywhere, or at least when it wasn't wallpaper, the worst shade of lime imaginable, though that could have just been the light. And it was way more cluttered to boot. I don't think this isn't a joke. I generally don't think I stood in the hallway long enough for my eyes to adjust to the light and see all the shit that was there. I was just in and out for my dinner, expressway to nutrition. I'd never spent enough time in the rest of the house for my eyes to adjust. But now all this stuff is leaping out of the shadows, telephone directories and lamps and antiques of dubious vintage. And it walked the line, too. Like it wasn't full hoarder, never go full hoarder. Just a kind of borderline eccentric. Plus, it was normal at the end of the day. It was normal. It didn't really get freaky until I hit up the drawers and chests and stuff. Oh, yes, chest, plural. She had a few of them. Although I didn't really know if any of it means anything, I may have bigged up the weirdness too much now I think of it. Like I say, it walked the line. For example, on the dining room, on the top left shelf of the cabinet next to some old-looking crystal glasses, there's a jade statue of a puma. One half of the room was normal, but in the back corner, near where I usually sat, there was a statue of a cherub which looked like it belonged outside. Plus his dick seemed a little on the large side for me, about ×4. I found 2 drawers full of old bodybuilding magazines from the 1950s in those cabinet drawers. Big muscles and bigger swimsuits. I think maybe the old gal was using them to flick the bean. Also, at the back of some of these drawers and stuff, there was scratched-in messages, or occasionally written in black marker, but I'll get back to that. There was, stuff you wouldn't expect of her. Random Blu-rays, mainstream stuff, but nothing you could imagine her watching. And an old defunct home video formats, video discs. I'm guessing you're not familiar. They're like big caddies with big discs inside. Really prehistoric. And at the back of one cupboard, behind lots of papers, accounting spreadsheets, which made no fucking sense to me whatsoever. Was some type of video I'd never seen before. Not sure that it was one. More organic looking than plastic. Wrong size and a head that resembled teeth. Dog-type teeth along the top where the flap would usually be. No, I wasn't tripping. That was to come later. Also, she had this creepy little spare room, like a box room, and it just had filing cabinets and a desk in there, and the desk drawers were full of lists of seemingly random words that reminded me of crypto recovery keys. And this made me think of the Pilgrim's story and the paper he found, although I don't remember what was on that. Yeah, I forgot about that. So there were a few, but I only remember 2 clearly. One said, "The path you are following grows in the dark and will soon reveal itself." And the other simply said, "Time is luck." Maybe it was the mad ramblings of her deceased hubby. Perhaps one day he said, "Look, if we don't upgrade this fucking TV, I'm tying a noose." And then when she didn't take him seriously, he cashed that check. I don't know, but certainly stunk of breakdown. Doesn't seem likely that they were written by somebody who lived there before, because she'd clearly lived there a long fucking time. Oh, and there was an attic, but it wasn't accessible. It was a long time before I took Bob up on his offer. The days were stretched and murky and gray, and sometimes they went around and around and around in a consummate circle. They stretched out, and my dreams were too long. Sometimes I got confused, and sometimes I got lost, even in the old lady's house, even in my basement room. Sometimes I wasn't even sure what country I was in, and I started to remember random, useless things. At least it all seemed random, and I kept thinking of people I hadn't seen for decades, or cared about in the first place, and obsessed on old trivial events. I also began to misremember Maurice, friend becoming foe, another reversal of the mirror. I got another one of those emails I mentioned, but this one wasn't so tedious, just odd. I'd have called paranoia or shenanigans, but this guy was pretty legit. Credible. I certainly never had him pegged as a liar, and he was as balanced as the next man. There was something about this story he told me. At first, why even mention it, but then it grew stranger and stranger in my mind, bigger. Maybe I'll tell it to you, if we find ourselves kicking back with a few brewskis when this is all over, when the dust has settled. Then a blessing and a curse occurred all at once. The drugs arrived in the post. The drugs I hadn't ordered. It had been so long with this particular brand of brain candy, at least, that I didn't even recognize. I thought to begin with that I was looking at a couple of dried-up baby geckos, like gecko jerky, then some kind of tree bark. But I looked a little closer, and I had a little snuff, and realized I was looking at my old friend Psilocybe cubensis, or one of his/her many similar friends. And not, by the way, thankfully, my old foe Amanita. But that's a story for another day, and you federal types are kind of funky when it comes to gifts of the earth. You people will send a man to prison for 20 years for 20 grams. Madness! I recognize them as magic mushrooms, like I say, but what I also noticed for the first time is how, in small dried-out doses at least, they smell and taste like chocolate. Weird, eh? Anyway, the headline is, "Old Blank Didn't Order No Shrooms." Wouldn't have done anyway, not out of respect for the old woman. What, after all, are the fucking odds of interception? But because I didn't want to be tripping down there in that dank basement, 5, 10, 15 years out of practice. And also, it just didn't really appeal. A thorium. Now, that's a drug I really wish they had never synthesized, because I could do that stuff night and day. But you will feel it's significant within about a week. It messes with your sense of time. Judgment? Well, but time, man. The ticking of the clock. And that eventually makes you doubt space. But I digress. Point is, I didn't order them, so it freaked me out a little when they came. I was thinking, well, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm thinking, does someone know I'm here? Is this a trick? A message from Maurice? I'm leaning in hope towards Maurice, and I'm running the numbers to try and ascertain whether anybody else could possibly know I'm there. You can't really get a bad batch of mushrooms, only the wrong mushrooms. But it was still undeniably weird. Also, and check this out, because this was no thorium memory backlog, the name, the fake plausible deniability name on the label, Tom Pigman, the main character, the hero, if you like, one of my fave series of childhood books. So I'm spooked as a motherfucker. But I'm also bored as a motherfucker, even with silly quest to spy on postmen, and all my endless bad dreams and bad decisions. So I wash them down with some coffee. Weird how these things creep up on you, also exactly the same and yet always unexpected. There's a movie that gets it just right. The wall of pictures I mentioned earlier was crooked and droopy. The pictures, I mean, not the wall. It was just like something out of a Dali picture, another cliché. But I stood up and noticed that and realized I was officially tripping. I knew, seen it before. Got the t-shirt. I didn't fancy spending my evening watching things bend. It's for another time and mindset. No, it wasn't really a bad trip per se. I couldn't put too fine a point on it without boring you to tears, but suffice it to say, I walked around the rim with the precipice only 2 steps away. But some steps were fun and euphoric. Kind of. I went outside and found the night changed. They had warned me that the moon would look strange, and it did. I stared at a nearby car and distant street sign. I grew paranoid of the neighbors, though of course that was only a practical concern. Wouldn't be the best time to converse for the first time. I saw an ant that barked like a spider. I suddenly noticed a sonic weave about my head, a no doubt dull domestic conversation about 7 doors down amplified into a stadium chorus. When I was young, I'd actually entertained the notion that the brain was being effectively rewired, like turning a dial on a radio to tune into another station, and that new frequency wasn't simply a distortion or a hallucination, but seeing an alternative reality, or something closer to an objective one. But now I see that's nonsense, isn't it? I retreated for the warmth and familiarity of my basement room, but instead of needle and spoon, I had cigarettes and shots of whiskey and failed attempts to ease my trip and calm my nerves. I had video games, new and old, and I had Sex Hub and Blu-ray. I avoided the social media BS, no time for chit-chat. I watched a film, a despised and mediocre one that I actually already abandoned 5 months back on a streaming platform. The 4K picture was the main draw in my current state. I watched a film pitched at adults, but surely designed for children, as faggy Hollywood ponces ran around in tights and capes, blasting each other with ray guns on a lava planet like Marvin the motherfucking Martian. But this time the CGI histrionics took on a new, darker, and more epic tone. The entire world beyond the screen, beyond my reach. It could have been a black hole dragging me to a dark quadrant of the cosmos. It could be a personal hell for everybody. Other things began to bend like picture frames, door lintels, cupboard edges, taps, and tiles. Why would things be that crooked? Why would they hide their true dimensions and crookedness from me? Unless reality was hiding all the time. Long and short, far and wide, in the walls like Bob and his slime, like Bob and his impossible demands. Food was typically uncooperative, peanut butter moving around in my mouth like sluggish spiders. I took a bath for the sheer fuckery of it. I stared for a very, very long time at a lone candle flame, which became a fire. For a moment I recalled the lava world and imagined the future. In my dream, the Pigman grew a pear, dragged that 2-ton antique away from the hidden wall, and went to work with a crowbar, followed by his bare hands. He didn't find anything alive, nothing to explain that impossible noise. But as plaster gave way and the seemingly pointless hole grew and grew, white shapes revealed themselves, and then these shapes revealed themselves to be bones. He soon realized, however, that they weren't real bones, but plastic fakes. But somehow these plastic exoskeletons were more sinister than the real thing, and there was no dog amongst them. There was something wrong with the scene, plain wrong and bad, and it filled Piggy/me with a sense of doom and existential dread, some collision with fate. Last moments of the dream story were just flickers, like inserts in a film. He lay there, I think, bathed in moonlight, clutching a small femur, but really none of this is certain. None of it was certain at all.